When we pick up other people's energy and emotions and we carry that with us, that can be so draining too. And we don't realize we're doing it. Emotions are contagious, but keep yourself emotionally and energetically protected from any draining. But the ideal goal would be to set up your life and systems and routines in a way that feels really good for you, where you're not participating in things that are against your values or aren't your priorities. A lot of us, when we look at our calendars, we're seeing that we go through our life doing a lot of things that aren't in alignment with our top priorities and how we want to spend our time, how we want to feel. And so it's pretty jarring when you realize that. You're like, oh, I actually spent a lot of time volunteering with the PTA, but that is not enjoyable for me. And I would rather be spending my time over here or spending the time with my kids in this way. So it's just a practice of getting curious when you're starting.
Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's married with 3 kids, I know how much parenthood could change a marriage. If flirting, laughing, and having fun together feels like a thing of the past, then I'm here to teach you that marriage doesn't have to feel so hard with your parents, and your marriage can thrive even when you're in the season of raising kids. Whether you're in a good place in your marriage and you just want to continue growing together, or you're wondering if you even like your spouse anymore, this podcast has something for you. Join me here each week as we dive into what it takes to help your marriage grow, and maybe even do a 180. You'll learn ways to handle conflict better, bring that spark back into your relationship, as well as learn how to improve other areas of your life from my lovely guest experts. Are you ready for the next stage of your life and marriage? Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. This episode, I have a guest here that's going to talk about something that I learned over the last, I want to say 3 to 5 years. I know that's a broad range, but 3 to 5 years. That has seriously changed the way I approach life and has led me to feel like life is so much more easeful and that I can handle more stress versus before I would just be a stress case 24/7, not really knowing and not really recognizing that that was my new normal after kids. And that's energy management. Okay. I'm not talking about electricity and making sure you turn off the lights when you leave the room, but our own energy, our own internal battery. Okay. So welcome, Jill. Thank you so much for being on the show. Can you please let the listeners know who you are, how old your kids are, where you're from, and why you do what you do?
Yeah. Hi. I'm so happy to be here with you, Michelle. I feel like we line up so well in the work that we do. So thanks for having me on. I am a mom of 4. I've got a 14, 11, 7, and 5-year-old. And I am also a fellow podcaster. I am based in Canada. So I'm excited to have you on my show coming up too. We're going to do a little swap there. But yeah, my job basically is helping moms. I'm a time management strategist, but the way that I like to talk about time management is it's actually energy management, right? And when I teach people and coach people on how to manage their time and energy, we do that with the end goal not being to have like a really balanced calendar or any of that, but the end goal is always like have the life you want and be able to like enjoy it. Right. So time management and energy management and like self-care, those are all tools to get us there. And energy management is one of my favorite things to talk about, especially with moms, because when I think about burnout and moms, I describe burnout as the unequal exchange of energy out and energy in. And so this is such a common thing we see specifically with moms and women in general. And we need to do better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like every mom, whether they've heard the phrase or not, has experienced burnout, probably on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And if you're new here, I talk a lot about how we learned this from previous generations because they like wore a badge of honor of being like the person that does it all and doesn't ask for anything. They're super selfless and they strive to like have that written on their gravestone as like most selfless person in the world. And they want to win that award. Whereas we're in this generation where like, wait a minute, why should we set ourselves on fire to keep everyone else warm while we're suffering, right? Like that doesn't have to be the way we do. We get to still enjoy life. while supporting other people, but we also get to be supported by ourselves. And so when I learned what you did, I was like, yes, I need someone to come on here and teach my listeners what energy management is, because I hear a lot of, well, I just need to figure out how to be more productive. I just need, like, we're not taking a look at the root issue here. We're just trying to make ourselves cram as much things as possible so that we feel like we've earned rest.
Mm-hmm. I hear that a lot. It's such a common thing. And just going back real quick to this like selfless martyrdom idea of generations past, I do really resonate with that. And also, it's one of the like 4 archetypes on my supermom quiz, like the selfless giver is what I call it. And I'm so happy to see it's like the least typed archetype,
Yay.
which makes me so happy because we're shifting these generational lines, right? Um, but yeah, I think that it really is something that we need to focus more on, is taking care of our energy and how we show up and what we give out, and prioritizing rest. I like to reframe rest as a productivity tool for those of us who are ingrained in this high achiever type of mentality, because it can be difficult for us to let go of that. But the important thing that I want everyone to hear is that your type of energy is different from the next person's type of energy. Is like it shows up differently in all of us, and at different times in our lives our energy can shift for various reasons too, right? Different seasons, different when you're working or when you're home with kids, when you have new kids, when you get a new job, when work is busy, when times are slow. It all can change. And so the ticket really is dialing in on where you're at, having a super clear connection with yourself so that you can see and understand and pay attention to your energy. Because if you're moving around the world just sort of in motion, in chaos, letting everything dictate how you move through life, you have no idea where your energy is actually at, so you can't start to fix it.
Right.
Yeah.
And this reminds me of how we live in a very patriarchal society, and we often get compared to men, and we do not have the same kind of energy usage as men, right? So what I've heard is that men recharge in a 24-hour cycle, whereas women, we are not like that. So you know the whole period thing. I happen to be on mine, so that's kind of funny. But our energy changes as we move through our cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. We go
And
in
not
20
just,
days.
yeah, exactly. Or if you have a longer cycle, I tend to have a longer cycle. And until I realized that that was the reason why sometimes I feel like I don't feel like doing shit right now. I just want to like take it easy. I want to lighten my load a lot, and I want to just sit and read or just like chill. And other times I'm like, I can do everything and I'm good. You know, like I got so much energy and everything in between. For those listeners who are new to this concept of energy, can you share with them what it is that we're talking about? Like, what do we mean by energy? So I already established we're not talking about electricity, but how would you describe how someone can be more aware of what we mean by how to manage our energy more effectively?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something that I ask guests on my podcast all the time, is to describe energy from their point of view. Because I remember when I was first understanding this concept, I literally just thought about my energy as like whether in the sense of, do I have energy to get out of bed and go for a run? Am I feeling low energy? Am I tired? It was very intertwined for me with tiredness and alertness. That's how energy was. And there was no nuances from there. But how I've come to understand energy and how I work with it is more of an understanding of your energy being kind of like your being almost. It's that big. It encompasses everything. If we think about this like bubble of personal space that we've all been, aware of, When people get too close into our personal space, we're like, you're in my bubble, right? It's the protective sort of layer that we assign to keep our energy in and to keep other people's energy out. It's their being. It's our being. It's how we move through. So it's a very meta kind of idea, metaphysical kind of idea. But once we start to learn more about it, we become more familiar with how this energy can feel. It's how we feel in our bodies. It's our emotional systems as well. It's our nervous system regulation. All of the science parts can match in with all of the woo parts to come to this understanding of our energy as our whole being. And there are so many different cycles and patterns that can impact this. Like you said, like our menstrual cycle can highly impact how we're feeling, how we're moving through life. The lunar cycles, the full moons and the new moons can highly impact it, right? We can talk about cycles of seasons with our physical weather. There can be cycles of life. If you're going for your mom and you go through this like newborn cycle, and then they change into that next sort of 6 or 7 years, and then they're teenagers. And so if we're aware of all these things that are impacting us externally, we can really get clear on what we can do from that internal perspective to manage the energy. Because if we don't, like I said earlier, we're just swept away with all of these things and we don't have control over it. And so our life doesn't often feel like we want it to feel like, even though it might look like it. I have women coming to me all the time and they're like, listen, I kind of got everything I wanted in life. Like I've got the job, I've got the house, the husband, the baby, like the car. I have it all, but I'm just not satisfied. And they're judging themselves on that. And they're like, what am I missing? Like, what am I doing wrong? Why can't I be happy? And it's not about anything else other than making sure like your energy is aligned and you're aware of where it's going.
I love what you described as like, oh, I have everything I want. But it's like, if you really peel back the layers, are those the things that you actually wanted? Or are those things that society or your family has told you you should strive for? And it just became your goal, right? Yeah. So when I think of energy, I definitely do think of like the whole, like, how much actual willpower do I have to do things related to my sleep, right? And as moms, we know that we're not always in control of how much sleep we get because people wake up in the middle of the night, or you have to go. Recently, I had to like take my daughter to the hospital because she ended up having croup and pneumonia. So like that's something out of your control, right? But what I've come to learn over the last several years is that energy is also what feels really good to you or not good to you. So like a task, while it may take the same amount of time or physical exertion as something else, to you, it could be, I have no energy to do that. Like I just feel demotivated and like I feel heavy about it and I just refuse. Whereas the other thing, even though same energy, like same physical effort, you could be like, oh, let's go, right? Mm-hmm. So can you share more about that? Because I really feel like more people need to know that different tasks can either give us energy or drain it. And that really matters.
It really matters. I got this really good visual early on when I was learning about this in terms of thinking about the tasks or even the people in your life as batteries, right? Or rather thinking of yourself as a battery as you go into these situations or tasks or relationships, and reflecting how you feel afterwards. Is that someone who like charges your battery or drains your battery, right? And so getting an understanding, first of all, of as you move through, different things are happening. When I talk to my dad all the time, I feel drained afterwards. But when I talk to my best friend, I feel great afterwards. And I've got renewed enthusiasm or motivation or whatever. And just paying attention to those things. But different things are going to be replenishing for different people. I have a list of different things that will provide rest based on your human design energy type, which is a whole other kind of way to describe energy, right? But it just points to the fact that not everyone is the same in what fills their cup, so to speak. We're all familiar with that term, right? So for somebody who is more of like a generator type of human design energy, they're going to need to do busy work to rest. They're not going to be able to sit down and meditate, right? That's not their jam. They have this need to stay active and stay busy, and they're going to need to have an activity where they have the physical, whether they're walking or doing dishes or making the bed, whatever that, so that their brain can come down into the rest. Whereas someone else who maybe takes in other people's information all day long, like a projector, is going to need quiet for rest. They're going to need sleep. That's going to feel more healing and restful and rejuvenating for them. So if we even just start to reflect on, well, what does fill me up? I always encourage people when they're talking about self-care to create a self-care list. Like, forget what everyone else thinks or what you've heard, but just be aware as you move through life for a week or two of things that really boost you. It's maybe a good way to put it. And it could be something like doing a puzzle. It could be something like going for a run, right? It could be any number of things, looking at freshly cut flowers, putting your feet on the grass, right? But they're going to be different for everybody. And then having this list to refer back to when you're like, oh, okay, I'm recognizing, we all have these moments, right? I'm recognizing that I feel in chaos. My nervous system is crazy right now. I need to ground myself, come down, or I need to do something for myself because I've given too much to others. And having an available resource just to peer at. Oh yeah, that's right. This works for me. I like this. Because not everything is going to feel the same for everybody. And understanding too, with the people in your life, with your kids or your spouse or your parents, maybe their type of energy management is going to be different. And you might not understand it. And I think having the language and understanding that we're all different in this way can be very healing, because like my first spouse, my husband at the time, needed to recharge in a very different way than me. And to me, it looked like laziness without understanding, right? And his reflection of me, where I need to be busy and constantly moving and active, even though that's stressful for me, was you can't slow down, right? You need to do it this way and it will be restful. And so giving our people permission to rest and recharge and engage in the world in the way that feels really supportive to them is helpful.
Absolutely. And I am always going to be an advocate for, the more you can get to know yourself, the better, right? And this is just one of the ways that you can get to know yourself, because if you're not aware of what gives you energy, what drains your energy, then you're just walking into disaster when it comes to burnout. Like, you're just continuously putting yourself in that position to experience burnout over and over and over again. And I've been there. I get it, right? I used to stay in friendships because of loyalty and time, until I recognized, like, why is it that anytime I'm with them, even though they're fun sometimes, I always feel like icky after I spend time with them? And now I'm like very mindful. Who do I feel lit up by when I hang out with them? And who do I feel like, ooh, I think we're going to hang out less.
Right.
Or maybe not at all. If it's just always like, I feel like I'm always giving and I'm never receiving, right? It's not reciprocal. And that, as a woman, was very difficult for me to act on, because I was like, man, I feel like a bitch. But
Yeah.
it's like, well, actually, that's not. Like, you don't have to be mean about it. I feel like it's in everyone's best interest if we're really authentic with ourselves, because if we release relationships that have served its purpose and no longer serve us, that makes room for them and us for things that are more aligned.
Yeah.
Right? So, can you speak to what you've noticed about your experience with applying all of this when it comes to the stickier moments, right? It's not just about like, oh, the dishes drain my battery, but like rather the real stuff that can make a really big difference in our lives that maybe we feel more hesitant to do because we're like, ooh, what is that going to say about us? How are they going to perceive us when we decide to stop doing this or to start doing this new thing?
Yeah, it's like setting boundaries around the energy, right? Because
Absolutely.
people who are on the opposite end of our boundary are not going to ever like it. Of course, it's going to be uncomfortable. And as a people pleaser, personally, I found it really uncomfortable when I tried to make a change that was going to be beneficial for myself. And then the person who was impacted on the other end, I didn't know how to manage that. And then I would say, oh, okay, let me help you feel better, and put myself again at the bottom of the priority list. And I think we can all understand how that can happen pretty easily with the way that we've been conditioned and raised and cultured and all of that. But something that I have noticed personally is my sleep is so important. It's so, so important. And as a mom, not easy to manage consistent, regulated sleep that feels restful, right? And I recognized this pretty early on that I was complete garbage and incapable of living properly when I was not rested. And I would take dedicated time, even when my kids stopped napping, for my nap on the weekends. I noticed that I couldn't get through the day when I had the kids home full time without losing my mind, yelling, feeling frustrated, breaking down, crying. There was a certain point of the day where I had reached my threshold of everyone needing mom, everyone touching mom, everyone directing mom's attention, and I would lose it. And so I decided that I would take my nap time, take my quiet time. And it took a while for the kids to get on board and leave me alone. It took a while for my friends and my family to understand, like, no, I can't do this thing in the middle of the day because this is the time I need to sleep so that I can continue and get through the rest of the day in a harmonious way that I'd like to feel and in the way that I want to show up in my interactions and for my family. And so that was a big one because I had a lot of guilt around taking that time for myself, even when it was so clear that I understood that that was the best self-care I could give to myself. And I think that we see this all the time in that, like you had mentioned, if there's someone who drains your battery, let's say a friend or somebody like that, we don't limit those interactions because we're worried about what the other people are going to think. And so in that case, if you're still in this situation and you're listening to me and you're like, okay, that's nice, Jill, but like, I'm not there yet. I don't know how to set these boundaries and I'm working towards it. But what do I do in the meantime as I navigate this tricky situation, right? And there are different ways we can protect our energy that nobody needs to know that we're doing it. And that can help you feel more in control of how you show up to the situation. And it's not just having a set end time to leave an interaction if you know you want to cut it short. That's an easy way to do it too, right? But while you're there, if you're feeling yourself get triggered, get hot, get drained, whatever is happening, you can do different things. One of the things that I learned about through reading, I forget what the book was called. It's Jamie Kern Lima's first book. She gave this idea of having a microphone that whenever you're interacting with someone, they're speaking into the microphone. So you can decide who you give your microphone to. But if you can't get out of the situation and you're dealing with someone who is depleting to you, you can turn the volume down on their microphone, and they don't need to know you've turned the volume down, but you can just receive less of it, right? You can let some of that bounce back to them, and they don't need to know, but you know that you've turned down the intention that you've done is turn down the receiving end, right? Other ways to do this, I practiced this a lot before I got good at creating physical boundaries for myself, was to put an imaginary like glass over top of myself and go into a situation that was going to be uncomfortable. I did this a lot with difficult conversations I needed to have with people. And it was like, okay, if I have this imaginary sort of glass over me to protect my energy, then I feel a lot safer. But also the intention is so that their reactions don't get to land in your body, right? Because that's a big piece of it. When we pick up other people's energy and pick up other people's emotions and we carry that with us, that can be so draining too. And we don't realize we're doing it. So these emotions are contagious. And so that's a really good way to sort of go into a situation that you know might be difficult, but keep yourself sort of emotionally and energetically protected from any draining, right? But the ideal goal would be to set up your life and systems and routines and ways in a way that feels really good for you, where you're not participating in things that are against your values or that are things that aren't your priorities. A lot of us, when we look at our calendars, right, we're seeing that we go through our life doing a lot of things that aren't in alignment with what we would say are our top priorities and how we want to spend our time, how we want to feel. And so it's pretty jarring when you realize that. You're like, oh, I actually spent a lot of time volunteering with the kids' PTA or the Beavers, the Scouts, Girl Guides, but that is not enjoyable for me. And I would rather be spending my time volunteering over here or spending the time, quality time with my kids in this way, right? So it's just a practice of getting curious when you're starting.
Yeah, and I think that this is one of my favorite ways to practice self-care, because if you are going to say, like, I'm burned out, I don't like how life feels, oh, I have to do these things, and you're far from feeling like, oh, I get to do these things, that's an invitation for you to reassess how you are making decisions that's structuring your life, because you are in charge of your life. Look, I get it if you have, kids with special needs and you've got to take them to appointments and whatnot. That's still a get to, because in the end, they're learning skills, you're learning skills to make life smoother for you, right?
Yeah.
But if you're allowing life to happen to you rather than you feeling like you're in the driver's seat, then I invite you to pause and really spend time, maybe take yourself out on a date and be like, okay, let's take a look at it and just have a really honest conversation with yourself. Like, okay, I don't like life. I don't like life right now. Why is that? What does my life look like right now? How am I experiencing it? What can I shift? Can I delegate some stuff? Can I do things differently? Can I make something more fun? Can I, like you said, spend more time with people who give me energy and give me life? Can I limit my exposure to people who suck the living energy out of me, right? And you get to control that, right? Like, I learned very quickly after applying this whole energy management approach to my own life is when I'm with people that suck my energy out, I have decided to be less engaging. I can still be there, but I'm not going to do my usual curious, I want to learn more about you, what's going on kind of thing, because what I'm going to hear back is not something that's going to be helpful for me. And I know that might sound selfish to some people, but we don't need to be there for everyone. If we're going to end up harming ourselves and essentially deflating our energy for the things that we prioritize most, let's say our marriage and our kids, if we're going to go home feeling cranky and irritable and angry, then you got to decide, where do you want to give your energy to? Yeah. So if that one friend is just always complaining, always very negative, you could still be in their life if you choose to, but you don't have to be like, okay, so what's going on? And, be very ingrained in their life. You could just be there and then decide when you've had enough and just not ask so many questions, not be so inquisitive. There are things that you can decide to do or not to do that kind of will dictate how much they give you, right? Because people are going to go to people that they feel like they can get something from if they're feeling like they can't give it to themselves. And so we can control how much we allow and offer up to them to take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think that this also can be reflective of social media too, right?
Oh,
Like
yes.
how often we are connecting with, consuming, and engaging with the different things online, whether it be a friend, a group, a colleague. Like, we need to be aware of this as a big energy potentially suck or energy boost as well, right? Not just in real life. But one thing that I want to go back to real quick that you mentioned that I thought was really important for people to hear is that you're bringing, at the end of the day, yourself home into your environment with your loved ones in whatever state you've allowed yourself to get in by that point in the day, right? So we start our day with the best intentions. During weekdays, we usually split. One parent goes to work here, one parent goes to work here, kids go off to school or daycare, whatever. And then we come back, all of us collectively. It's not just moms that need to be aware of this. This is a really wonderful thing to teach our kids too, because they'll often come home and like crumble, right? Because they didn't manage their energy well throughout the day. And they're finally in that safe space with their loved ones, but you get the crappy version of them where they're like crying and demanding things and melting down and all of that. If you've experienced that with a kid in school, it's wild and it's common. But the idea of saving our best stuff for our loved ones and making sure that we take care of ourselves so that we can be the best version of us to the people who mean the most to us. That's something that I learned a little bit later in life. I always gave my best away during the day. I was the most polite, the most understanding, the most tolerant, the most patient throughout the day with my bosses and my friends and my teachers. And then I'd get home and I'd be a complete monster sometimes, or I'd go straight to bed, or I just didn't have it in me to participate with the people who really I cared the most about. And one tool I'll offer for people who may be in that situation where they're thinking, okay, well, my friends aren't the ones that drain me. It's my coworker, or it's that lady that I have to carpool with, or it's who knows, something that you can't as easily limit your time with. Is doing sort of a practice when you leave them, having a transition. And it's all mindset and it's all intention when it comes down to it, right? It's just being constantly aware of how you're moving through life, which feels tedious. But once you get used to doing it and you're constantly aware, it's just part of how you are. But something I like to do is, there's two ways to look at it, but I essentially separate this energy, this idea of their energy and my energy. One of my teachers talks about it as being like tangled. So if you're watching, you can see I've got my hands together, and one hand is me and one hand is the other person, and we get tangled throughout the day. The fingers get intertwined. And so when I leave that person, when I go into my next interaction, and sometimes I'll just put my hands together like this and separate them. And that gives me the reminder, oh yes, I need to untangle from this person's energy, from this interaction. Another spiritual leader that I learned from does what's called cord cutting. And whether you believe or not in this spiritual, it's the idea of getting intentional with leaving one situation and showing up differently in another. You're shifting the way that you're showing up. So cord cutting, you can imagine a literal cord or a string or something going from you and your energy body, your bubble, whatever, into a person, place, thing, idea. It can be attached. And so that's what happens often when we're at home and we're still thinking about work, right? Or the conversation that we had with that person is still in our mind and we just can't let it go, but we're trying to do something else. We're making dinner, whatever, putting our kids to bed. And so just imagining that cord and like literally putting your hands in the air, pretending you're scissors and you're cutting it, right? And just letting that cord go back to that person, place, situation. And it doesn't need to be attached to you once you leave it. And so these are interesting ways that we can sort of use our imagination to protect that energy and to make sure that we're being really present with each moment that we're in, so that we can show up as that version of ourselves that we really want to be and feel how we want to feel.
Yeah, I love this, because for those who work outside the home or even inside the home, because virtual work is like so predominant now. Shoot, I'm a virtual worker, right? When you have trouble not bringing work home,
Yeah.
this could be a fantastic way for you to properly transition. You could do either of the things that Jill recommended, or you could just make up your own. It could be a visual thing, right? You could, what I've done in the past, like let's say I have like a heavier issue that I'm handling with a client, I will literally like take a deep breath and shake out my hands as if it's just on my body. I didn't absorb it just because I've had practice where like if I feel like the energy is like trying to come into me, I'm like, okay, not mine, not mine. And I will literally shake my hands under the table during the session. But if I still have stuff that I feel is on me, then I will just shake it off, take deep breath, remind myself, okay, I'm stepping into mom, wife role. And then it's like a mental separation, right? So whatever it is that you're into, whether you believe in what we're saying or not, doesn't matter. Do something. I've heard of people changing out of their clothes into different clothes.
Yep.
I've heard of them playing a song to kind of just be like, oh, this is my home anthem or whatever, just to have a actual physical in real life, in real time transition. Like, okay, I'm now here. Like, I'm not there anymore. I am here. So if you are experiencing that time where it's like, oh man, I just like keep complaining about work and it's just like I can't separate myself, try doing something like this or make something up that you feel might work better for you. That's okay. The point is, be where your feet are. I love that phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Be where your feet are. Your mind can go all over the place all of the time, but just remind yourself, oh, where am I? I'm home. Who am I with? Oh, the people I love. Who do I want to be? Oh, this. So whatever you need to do to take care of yourself so that you can be that person. And we're not saying like, oh, just ignore it and stuff it down.
Mm-mm.
No, I'm saying recognize, oh, I'm struggling. And maybe you're like, hey, husband, I don't want to I don't want to bring this home, but can you just have like 5 minutes of just venting time? I don't need you to offer me any solutions or advice, but I just really need to get this off my chest so that I can fully transition and be yours for the next, like, whatever.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like if you miss that transition, if you're in it and you're trying and you're practicing, you're like, okay, remember Michelle and Jill talking about this? I'm going to try this today. And then life happens and you don't get it at the time where you leave work between you pick up kids or between the picking up kids and putting them to bed and then being grown-ups with no kids. If you miss that transition, it's okay. Whenever you're realizing that you're not where your feet are, right? You can take a minute, you can involve the people around you and say like, oh my gosh, this is not how I want to be showing up or feeling right now. I'm going to go and take 3 minutes to myself, or let's all go for a walk together, or like whatever makes sense. You don't have to take yourself physically away if that doesn't feel right. You can involve the other people. You can say, I just need you to be like you had said, Michelle, I need to vent. You need to be a shoulder for me or an ear for me right now. And then we can move on. But the more that we do this, the more that our people get used to it. I do this all the time. If we're in a situation playing a board game, for example, my autistic son gets really, he has a hard time doing games because if he's losing, he'll just give up and then he'll fight. And then there's all these things. And it like really bothers me in a way that I'm still working on managing. And if I feel myself getting this crazy energy and letting it in, I just say, hey guys, I just need to go for a few minutes and I'll go breathe, or I'll do some tapping, or I'll breathe in essential oil, or I'll who knows what. There's so many tools that now I've developed that can help me with the energy management. But I'll just take a minute and I'll say, okay, I'll be back in 3. And they're so used to it that now they're like, oh, mom reached her limit. Okay, cool. Yeah, she's going to need a minute. And I don't feel bad anymore. Back to the beginning of this conversation when we were talking about other people's expectations and their judgments and feeling guilty or not doing it because of that pressure, perceived pressure, self-induced pressure. Often with practice, it gets easier. Your people get more used to it, and communicating your needs is such a huge piece of this whole conversation.
Absolutely. And I want to celebrate you for having that awareness to give yourself a timeout, essentially, because the alternative is you lose your shit, you yell at people, and then they're like, what the hell's wrong with you? And then they don't want to be around you. Instead, you're catching yourself. You're like, oh, I'm hitting that limit. I'm going to remove myself so that I can come back, because this is not anything that you guys are doing. This is just me managing myself. Right?
Yeah.
So we're not saying, hey, be perfect and be on 24/7. No, that is not sustainable. That is not even authentic in any way to yourself, because we are emotional beings. We're going to hit our limit. We're going to, not feel the best all the time. But when you start to acknowledge, oh, I am reaching my limit, I am going to take a break, not only does this improve your relationship with them, because you're like, hey, our relationship matters to me, I'm going to go take a chill pill and come back when I'm ready to be around people again. And you're teaching them, oh, this is how you take care of yourself when you hit that limit, so that they don't normalize outbursts.
Yeah. One of my,
Now, I will say this is easier said than done,
of course.
but with practice, it does get easier.
Yeah. And it's one of my favorite things about doing this work and this learning and this growth is that we're modeling all the time for our people, whether it be our grown-up people, like my parents are learning and adjusting with no pressure, but just from seeing and experiencing how I am changing, just like my peers and my friends are, just like my kids are. And so as we learn these tools, we, without even needing to, offer these tools up to the people around us, and they can grab them and go with them or not. It doesn't matter. But the fact that we're making these healthy choices and changes for ourselves can be so beneficial for our entire environment and everybody in it. And the ripple effect is constantly what reminds me to keep doing it when it does feel hard, because there are days, let's be honest, where it does feel hard to try to be your best self, when it does feel hard to try not to yell or to take yourself out of the situation or be the bigger person or set that boundary and hold it, whatever it is. It's not easy stuff. If it was, everyone would have already achieved it. We'd all be doing it. We'd be living our best lives and everyone would be in harmony. And it's not easy. It's important. But that ripple effect is what keeps me grounded when I feel frustrated.
Absolutely. And I have 3 kids, but 2 live with me. I've got almost 8-year-old. Actually, by the time this airs, he'll be 8. And I have a 4-year-old. And as I get better at this, okay, because I am nowhere near perfect at this. Maybe I'll be 75% of the time I'll get it right? It's so awesome to see when they think to do it.
Yeah.
Right? When my 4-year-old's like, I feel really angry. And oh my gosh, her feelings are strong. Okay. For my fellow human design nerds, she's an emotional authority. So thankfully I've only got one of those in the family, but she's got enough feelings for the entire family. And I thought I was emotional. She's next level. Okay. As happy as she is, she can be equally angry at times. And so when she's able to say that, or I notice her trying to breathe, I'm like, okay, I definitely have to keep going because it's making a difference. And I'm just so excited for how differently she's going to experience her teenage years or her adulthood, because she's already practicing the awareness of, oh, when I'm mad, it feels like this in my body. And these are the tools that I have available to me should she choose to use them. That's a work in progress, right? She's still 4. But it's just so awesome to see, oh, what we do, they do copy, And so, not to put too much pressure on you, but you learning to do this for yourself is going to help you experience life better and them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so awesome.
It's the best. It's the best. And just like you are getting inspired by seeing your daughter make these changes, and it sort of helps you keep on track, it can be really helpful if we find someone in our circle or a coach or something, some sort of support group or accountability person. Because when you're struggling, when you kind of fall off the wagon or forget, or when you're doing something great and you're super proud of yourself, having someone who understands the work that you're doing to reflect back to you and to offer guidance and support and reaffirm that commitment and help you stay on track can be so helpful too. So if you're into this, find a girlfriend who's into it too, or like it can be your partner. I see couples sometimes who are really good at both being in the work. That's not, in my experience, super common. Usually one person gets into it first and then it takes the other person a bit of time to come around if they do. But having someone in your life, and if there's no one in your life, finding someone to help support you through this, because you're that person for your kid, right? And having someone to help you helps them too, just as much as it helps you. So it's just this beautiful cyclical work.
Absolutely. I use my husband because sometimes I'll catch myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't lose it. Like I'll say like, sometimes we'll have our rough mornings or rough dinner times and whatever. And his work fluctuates. Sometimes it'll be like a reasonable amount. And other times it's like, oh, he's got to work so much so that I'm mostly solo parenting, even though he's there. And I'll be like, this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened. And I actually didn't yell at them. Like I was very calm. I was frustrated, but I aired my frustration. I let them know and I was able to vocalize it without yelling at them and losing my shit. And he'd be like, yeah, you go. So, but again, don't get it perfect all the time, but even just shouting yourself out is very healing and awesome because you get to pat yourself on the back. This is hard work here, okay? You're undoing so much of what you learned was normal that you're going against what you find natural to you, okay? So let's not discount the amount of work that it takes for you to get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right. And it's such a great reminder. Like it's just such a great reminder to say, oh my God, this is big. It's hard and I'm doing it and I'm proud of myself, and being proud of yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love this whole conversation and I'm sure we can go on forever because like literally your energy spans every single facet of your life. Okay. So if you have loved what you heard, please go follow Jill. Can you share with us where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, thanks. That's so awesome. I would love to be in community with your community. Probably Instagram. Drop me a line on Instagram and let me know that you heard about me here with Michelle. And probably also the other place that's really fun to connect is The Village. The Village is my online community, and it's free to try for 22 days. And we do all kinds of interactive stuff. I love the idea of being live with people, because of that energy of being in the same room, even if we're virtual, right? Being able to ask questions and rather than just teaching and teaching and showing up and not having that back and forth. So I love all of that. You'll find me at Grow Like a Mother on all the platforms. So please reach out. I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah. And you said you have a podcast too, right? What is that called?
So it's also called Grow Like a Mother. And it's quick 20-minute, half-hour episodes where we just mostly now I interview a lot of guests who are much wiser than me on different things that I'm interested in, that I think are really helpful for all moms who are in this.
It's so fun though. I love doing this.
It's the best. Yeah. I talked with a girl this morning on parenting teens. And I was like, I really need this myself. So
yes.
Please let's deal with this. Yeah.
Yes. I love that so much. Mm-hmm. Okay. So before I let you go, I would love to ask you a question because I love to ask all my guests a question so listeners can get to know you better. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. So let's see. What should we... You know what? I'm feeling like asking about vacation, okay? Because summer is pretty much over. Mm. But where is your favorite place to vacation?
The Rocky Mountains.
Ooh.
I was lucky enough to go back this year in May and take my boyfriend for the first time. He had never been west, so it was great. But that's where my heart is. I lived in Alberta and for several years right after university, and it feels like home. So when I think about vacationing, I want something that's going to give me adventure, but also fill me up, because I don't like coming home from vacation feeling drained. Like I need a vacation from my vacation, you know? So
That's
for me,
usually the case with kids.
yeah, exactly. But that's a perfect spot for me, because you can get nature, you can get quietness, you can get adventure, good food, friends, like it's everything.
Okay. I'll have to go check it out.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of the show and imparting all your wisdom and teaching the listeners about energy management. And listeners, thank you for making it all the way to the end. I hope that you got a lot out of this episode, because seriously, if you're going to start anywhere when it comes to self-care, please start here, because it's simple to grasp, but it touches all areas of your life, and you can just start noticing. Keep a log, journal or something. Just start noticing, how do different things affect you? Okay, because I promise you that once you start seeing the patterns and you make those subtle shifts of what to let into your life more or what to let into your life less, you're going to notice that you're going to feel lighter and lighter when you go throughout your day. You're not going to feel like you're on this like never-ending hamster wheel where you're not in control, but you're going to feel more in control of your life, and it's going to feel so much better. And I can't wait to hear about it. And send this to someone if you feel like they could benefit from listening to this episode as well. And please, if you want to support the show, go leave a rating and a review on iTunes. I would love you forever for that. I always love to read it. And I'll catch you back here on the next episode. Bye. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, please send me a message over on Instagram at Michelle Perda Coaching to let me know what you loved most about it. Hearing from my listeners is my absolute favorite. And if you've been loving this podcast, please leave a rating and review. This will help people like you find the show and get the help they need. Catch you here on the next episode. Bye.